The knife hit the table before anyone heard him walk in. It embedded itself 2 inches deep into the solid mahogany, handle still vibrating, and every single person in that ballroom, all 100 of them, stopped breathing at exactly the same moment. Champagne glasses hovered halfway to lips. A woman in a red Ankara gown grabbed her husband's arm without looking at him. The 12-piece Afrobeats band playing in the corner cut off so abruptly that the silence that followed felt physical, like a wall that had materialized in the center of the room. Then he spoke. "Get away from her." Quietly. Devastatingly quietly. The kind of quiet that is not the absence of violence but the presence of it, contained, for now, by a will so absolute it made the air in the room feel pressurized. Kang Jaemin stood in the entrance of the Grand Abuja ballroom wearing a black suit that had not been purchased, it had been built, piece by piece, around a body that carried itself like a weapon. His face was still. His eyes were not. They were fixed on one point across the room with the focused intensity of a man who has already made every decision that matters and is now simply executing. 100 guests froze. The man closest to Yemi, Adaeze, who had his hand on her wrist, who had been leaning into her personal space for the past 4 minutes with the casual entitlement of someone who had never once been made to feel small, released her immediately. Not slowly. Immediately. The way you release something when your fingers suddenly remember what fire feels like. Yemi stood in the center of the ballroom in a gold and emerald Korean hanbok she had spent 3 weeks choosing, her natural hair pinned up with jade ornaments that caught the chandelier light, her dark eyes wide and fixed on the man who had just silenced an entire room by walking into it. She had not seen Kang Jaemin in 8 months. 8 months, 12 days, and a number of hours she refused to count because counting meant she had been counting, and she was not going to give him that. He crossed the ballroom floor in the kind of silence that only exists when 100 people are unanimously, desperately pretending to look at something else. His steps were even. Unhurried. Each one landing with the quiet certainty of a man who had never once in his adult life questioned whether he had the right to be somewhere. He stopped 4 feet from her. Close enough that she could see the thing he was hiding behind the stillness of his face, not anger, though anger was there too. Something older than anger. Something that had been sitting in him for 8 months and 12 days and had run out of patience entirely. "Jaemin," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. She had always been good at that, performing calm while something seismic moved underneath it. Her mother had called it her superpower. Her therapist had called it a coping mechanism. Right now she was simply calling it survival. "You weren't supposed to be at this event," he said. "You weren't supposed to be in Nigeria," she replied. "Before we go any further, because I can already feel the energy in this story and I know you can too, pause for 1 second and tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? Are you in Lagos, Seoul, London, Atlanta? And are you already Team Jaemin or Team Yemi? I genuinely want to know. If you are enjoying this story so far, hit that like button right now, it costs you nothing and it means everything. Okay. Back to Abuja. Back to these 2 people and the 8 months of silence sitting between them like a living thing. Behind her, she heard the man who had been holding her wrist make a quiet, tactical decision to relocate to the far end of the bar. Smart. She almost felt sorry for him, he had simply been in the wrong place, standing next to the wrong woman, at the precise moment the most dangerous man in 3 countries walked through a door. Kang Jaemin was not dangerous in the way that loud men are dangerous. He did not need volume. He did not need theatrics. He had built his empire, stretching from the port cities of South Korea through the trade corridors of West Africa, through import networks that appeared legitimate on every piece of paper that had ever been filed on them, on a single foundational principle: patience is not weakness. Patience is the sharpest weapon in any room, because everyone else always runs out of it first. He had learned that at 15, in a Busan shipping yard, watching his father negotiate with men twice his size over containers that held things that were not listed on any manifest. He had learned that patience outlasts aggression, that silence outlasts argument, that the man who speaks last in any room is the man who controls it. He had never once lost that lesson. Not in 15 years of building something from nothing. Not in boardrooms in Seoul or port negotiations in Lagos or the 3 separate occasions when people who had underestimated him had been quietly, permanently corrected. He had, however, almost lost it 8 months ago. When Yemi left. She had not disappeared. That was the thing that had undone him most completely. She had not run or hidden or made herself unreachable. She had simply, clearly, with full eye contact and a voice that did not shake, told him that she was leaving, and then she had left. Packed one bag. Taken her mother's photograph off his refrigerator. Removed the single key from her keyring and placed it on the kitchen counter with the deliberate finality of a full stop at the end of a sentence. He had stood in that kitchen for a long time after the door closed. And now she was standing in front of him in a Lagos ballroom in a gold and emerald hanbok with jade in her hair, and the one thing he had given her, the single thing she had taken and he had said nothing about, still visible at her throat. The bracelet. Thin. Silver. Engraved on the inside with 2 words in Hangul. She had kept it. His jaw tightened. Just slightly. Just enough. "We need to talk," he said. Her chin lifted. "We have nothing to talk about. Yemi. Don't. Your life," he said quietly, "is in danger." The chandelier light caught the jade ornaments in her hair as she went completely still. She searched his face for the lie. That was always her first instinct with Jaemin, look for the place where the truth bent, where the control slipped just enough to reveal manipulation underneath. She had spent 2 years learning his face the way cartographers learn coastlines, every detail, every shift, every micro-expression that the rest of the world never caught because the rest of the world was not paying the kind of attention she had paid. She found no lie this time. That was the most frightening thing about this moment. Not the knife still embedded in the mahogany table behind him. Not the 100 guests rearranging themselves carefully around the edges of the room like water finding new channels. Not even the memory of his voice saying her name across 8 months of silence. It was the fact that Kang Jaemin, who controlled every room he entered and every word he released into it, looked, underneath all that stillness, underneath all that devastating composure, afraid. Not for himself. She understood that immediately. He had never once been afraid for himself. "What kind of danger?" she asked. He glanced once, briefly, to his left. A gesture so small that anyone watching would have missed it. She did not miss it. She followed the line of his gaze across the ballroom to a man standing near the east corridor, late 50s, Korean, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal suit that was expensive enough to be invisible. The kind of expensive that did not announce itself because it did not need to. She recognized him. The recognition hit her like cold water, sudden, total, and shocking in a way she had not been shocked in a very long time. Her body knew before her mind caught up, some deep animal instinct firing before conscious thought could organize itself into language. Her fingers went cold. Her next breath came out uneven. "That is Chairman O," she said. Barely above a whisper. "Yes. He is supposed to be in prison." Her voice was flat. Factual. The voice she used when emotion was too large to carry, and so she set it down and spoke around it instead. He was sentenced 18 months ago. Securities fraud, money laundering, 3 counts of. He was released 4 months ago, Jaemin said quietly. Quietly. The kind of release that does not make newspapers because the people who arranged it owned several of them. She stared at Chairman O across the ballroom. He was speaking to a woman in a deep blue oso oak, gesturing with the comfortable authority of a man who had never genuinely accepted the possibility that consequences applied to him personally. He had not looked in their direction. That was deliberate. She understood that too, the careful studied non-attention of someone performing ignorance while cataloging everything. "Why is he here?" she asked. "Why is he in Abuja?" "Because you are in Abuja." She turned back to Jaemin. The full weight of what he was not yet saying pressed against the space between them like something with mass. What does Chairman O want with me? Jaemin's expression did not change. But his hands, and this was the tell she had discovered in year one of knowing him, the single reliable crack in the architecture of his control, his hands, which had been loose at his sides, closed slowly into fists. 18 months ago, he said, before his arrest, Oh Tae-sung was negotiating the acquisition of your father's textile company. Your father refused to sell. Repeatedly. Publicly, in ways that embarrassed Oh in front of people he could not afford to be embarrassed in front of. She knew this. Her father, Chief Emeka Adaeze, who had built Adaeze textiles from a single loom in a Enugu market stall into one of the largest fabric export companies in West Africa, had told the story with a particular brand of quiet pride. The Korean chairman who had offered him a number with 8 figures and her father who had looked at it and said some things are not for sale. What does that have to do with me being in danger, she asked. But even as she asked it something was assembling itself in her chest, cold and certain, the way storms assemble on open water before anyone on shore has thought to look up. Because Oh Tae-sung does not acquire companies anymore, Jaemin said. He acquires leverage. And the most direct leverage over your father, he paused, and she watched him choose the next words with surgical care, is you. The chandeliers above them seemed suddenly very bright. The Afrobeats band had resumed playing somewhere behind her, something slow and aching that felt like the wrong soundtrack for what was happening in her body right now, which was a complete and rapid dismantling of every assumption she had carried into this ballroom tonight. She had come to this event for a reason that had nothing to do with Jaemin, nothing to do with Korean chairman or leverage or danger. She had come because her friend Chisholm was being celebrated for her fashion label's first international deal and Yemi had promised to be there and Yemi kept her promises. That was all this was supposed to be. A celebration. Champagne and music and genuine joy for someone she loved. Instead she was standing in the center of it all, in her gold and emerald hanbok, with the silver bracelet on her wrist that she had never been able to take off, being told by the man she had spent 8 months trying to stop loving that her life was a bargaining chip in someone else's game. What do you need from me? She asked. I need you to leave with me. Right now. Tonight. And if I say no? He looked at her steadily. Then I stay anyway. But leaving is safer. From across the ballroom, Chairman Oh Tae-sung finally turned his head. His eyes found hers with the precision of someone who had known exactly where she was the entire time. He smiled. It was the coldest thing she had seen in 8 months. Her hand moved without instruction to the bracelet on her wrist, fingers closing around it like an answer she was not ready to say out loud. She made her decision in the space between one breath and the next. Give me 5 minutes, she said. I need to say goodbye to Chisholm. I will not just disappear from her night without a word. She planned this evening for 6 months. Jaemin studied her face for exactly 3 seconds. She knew he was calculating, weighing the risk of 5 minutes against the cost of refusing her the one thing that was, underneath everything, a completely human and reasonable request. She watched him find the line between protection and control, and she watched him, deliberately, choose protection. 3 minutes, he said. I will be 4 steps behind you the entire time. She nodded and turned toward the far end of the ballroom where Chisholm Okafor stood radiant in a burnt orange ensemble of her own design, laughing at something her manager had said, completely unaware that the evening had tilted on its axis in the past 7 minutes. Yemi moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years learning how to cross rooms without drawing attention, a skill she had acquired, she realized now, entirely during her time with Jaemin. Another thing he had given her without either of them naming it. She was 12 feet from Chisholm when she saw him. Damelaire. He was standing in the corridor that led to the event's private offices, partially obscured by the heavy drape of a floor-length curtain, his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking quietly, urgently, his free hand moving in the small tight gestures he always made when he was negotiating something. Yemi knew those gestures. She had known Damelaire Fashola for 4 years, he was Chisholm's business manager, the man who had structured every deal Chisholm's label had ever signed, the man Chisholm trusted with every financial decision, every contract, every conversation that required both loyalty and intelligence. He was also, Yemi registered with a clarity that felt almost hallucinatory in its sharpness, looking directly at Chairman Oh Tae-sung across the ballroom while he spoke into his phone. She stopped walking. Behind her, she felt rather than heard Jaemin close the distance between them by 2 steps. "How long?" he said quietly, close to her ear. "Not a question about time. A question about Damolaire." "You knew?" she breathed. "I suspected. Now I am certain." The full architecture of it assembled itself in her mind with a horrible, rapid efficiency. Chisholm's sudden international deal, the one that had come through 3 weeks ago, faster than any deal in the fashion industry moved, with a Korean distribution partner nobody in Chisholm's circle had ever heard of before. Yemi had asked about it once, gently, and Chisholm had laughed and said Damolaire handled it. "You know how he is, he never explains the process, only the result." Yemi had accepted that because Damolaire had never given any of them a reason not to accept it. Except the Korean distribution partner was a subsidiary. And the parent company of that subsidiary, Yemi now understood with cold and nauseating certainty, traced back through 3 layers of corporate structure to Oh Tae-sung. Damolaire had not found Chisholm an international deal. He had delivered Chisholm, and by extension, Chisholm's closest friend, Yemi Adaeze, daughter of Chief Emeka Adaeze, directly into Oh Tae-sung's orbit. Gift wrapped. With a bow. "Chisholm doesn't know," Yemi said. It was not a question either. "No," Jaemin confirmed. "She doesn't." Yemi looked at her friend across the ballroom. Chisholm, who had grown up 2 houses down from her in Enugu, who had shared school uniforms when one of their families was having a hard month, who had sat on the floor of Yemi's bedroom at 3 in the morning during the worst week of Yemi's life and said nothing, just stayed, because sometimes staying is the only language that matters. Chisholm, who was laughing right now, bright and open and completely unguarded, in a room that had been engineered around her without her knowledge. Something shifted in Yemi's chest. Something that had been grief and confusion and the complicated exhaustion of 8 months of trying to rebuild herself without Jaemin. It shifted and settled into something much simpler and much more dangerous. Clarity. "I am not leaving," she said. Jaemin went very still behind her. "Yemi. I am not leaving Chisholm in this room with these people while she has no idea what is happening around her." She turned to face him and she could feel it in herself, the thing he had always said about her, in the quiet hours when he said true things instead of careful things, that she was the most quietly ferocious person he had ever met. "So you have 2 options. You help me get her out too. Or you leave and I handle this alone." She watched something move through his face. Not irritation. Not even the particular brand of controlled frustration she knew well from 2 years of loving him. It was something rawer than either of those things, the expression of a man who is being reminded, against every survival instinct he has spent a lifetime sharpening, why he is still standing in this ballroom instead of having sent a team and stayed safely elsewhere. He had come himself. He had crossed 1,200 kilometers and walked into an event he was not invited to because she was here and she was in danger. And now she was looking at him with that face, that impossible, infuriating, completely non-negotiable face, and he was remembering, all over again, exactly why 8 months of silence had not been enough to finish what he felt. "Both of you," he said finally. "We move both of you. But it has to be now, Yemi. Not in 3 minutes. Now." She nodded once. Then Damolaire looked up from his phone, and his eyes found hers across the room, and his face did the thing that Jaemin's almost never did. It showed everything. The guilt. The calculation. The desperate, scrambling assessment of how much she knew and what she was going to do about it. It lasted less than 2 seconds before the mask came back up, but 2 seconds was enough. He knew that she knew. He reached into his jacket pocket. Jaemin moved first. Jaemin moved first and he moved fast. Not toward Damolaire. That was what surprised her, she had expected him to cross the room, to intercept, to do the thing that men like him did when they identified a threat, which was to walk directly at it with the full force of everything they were. Instead he moved sideways, one smooth step to his left, positioning himself between Yemi and the corridor where Damelaire was standing, and simultaneously raised 2 fingers in a gesture so small and precise that she almost missed it. She did not miss what happened next. 3 men she had not noticed before, had genuinely not noticed, which told her everything about how good they were at not being noticed, peeled themselves from different points around the ballroom's perimeter. One from near the bar. One from beside the band. One from a position close to the main doors. They moved without urgency and without hesitation, converging on the corridor from 3 different angles, and within 40 seconds of Jaemin's gesture Damelaire Fashola was no longer reaching into his jacket pocket. He was standing very still with 3 men around him who were not touching him and did not need to. Professional. Invisible to anyone not paying the right kind of attention. The kind of operation that left no fingerprints on the evening. Yemi released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "You brought a team," she said. "I always bring a team," Jaemin replied. His eyes were still moving, across the room, to Chairman O, to the doors, back to Damelaire, a constant quiet surveillance that never fully rested. "I just do not always make them visible." And O Tae-sung? Being managed. He said it the way you say the weather is being managed, as a fact, not a boast. He will not move tonight. He came to observe and to confirm your presence. Now that his asset, a brief pause on the word, Damelaire has been neutralized, he has no direct mechanism in this room. He will leave. His people will follow. She watched him say all of this with the calm efficiency of someone reading from a document he had already memorized. And something in that, the preparation of it, the sheer scope of what he had organized and deployed and set in motion before he ever walked through that door tonight, cracked something open in her that she had been keeping carefully sealed for 8 months. "How long have you known I was in danger?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. That was its own answer. "Jaemin." Her voice was quiet but it had an edge in it now. "How long?" 6 weeks, he said. The number landed on her like something physical. 6 weeks. While she had been in Abuja building the new version of her life, the version that did not have him in it, the version she had been constructing with the painstaking care of someone rebuilding after a flood, he had known for 6 weeks that she was being circled, and he had said nothing, and he had not come, and she had been completely unaware of any of it. "Why did you wait?" she asked. 6 weeks, Jaemin. "Why did you wait until tonight?" "Because I was trying to resolve it without coming here." He said it plainly. No deflection. No careful political framing. Just the truth, which from him always arrived without decoration. "I was trying to handle Oh Tae-sung through legal channels, through financial pressure, through 3 different intermediaries. I did not want to." He stopped. "You did not want to what?" His jaw tightened. "That familiar tell. I did not want to use your danger as a reason to stand in front of you again. Because I knew how it would look. I knew you would wonder if I was telling the truth or manufacturing an excuse to." He stopped again. Looked at her directly. "I did not want you to doubt my reasons for coming." The ballroom moved around them. The music played. 100 guests had largely convinced themselves that whatever had happened earlier was resolved and had returned to the comfortable business of celebrating. Champagne was flowing again. Somewhere behind her Chisholm was still laughing, still bright, still entirely unaware. And Yemi was standing in the middle of all of it absorbing the fact that Kang Jaemin, who had never once in 2 years of loving her said anything that was not precisely calculated to reveal only what he chose to reveal, had just told her something completely unguarded. Something that exposed the machinery behind the composure. Something that sounded, underneath all the careful language, remarkably like, "I was afraid you would not believe me. I was afraid you would think I was using your fear to get back to you. I wanted to come to you cleanly or not at all." She did not know what to do with that. So she did what she always did when something was too large to process immediately, she set it aside and focused on what was directly in front of her. Chisholm, she said. We need to tell her. He nodded. Carefully. She is going to be devastated. Her voice thinned slightly on the word. Damelaire has been her right hand for 4 years. She trusts him completely. This is going to, she pressed her lips together. This is going to break something in her. I know, Jaemin said. But she needs to know tonight. Before she signs anything else connected to O's network. Before this goes any further. Yemi straightened. Rolled her shoulders back. Put on the face she wore when she was about to walk into something painful on purpose, which was not a hard face, not a closed face, but a present one. Fully present. Fully committed to the person on the other side of the hard thing. She crossed the ballroom toward Chisholm. Her friend saw her coming and smiled, that wide, whole-face smile that had not changed since they were 8 years old sharing a desk in a classroom in Enugu. Yemi. I have been looking for you everywhere, where did you, she stopped. Read Yemi's face the way only someone who has known you for 23 years can read it. The smile faded. What happened? Yemi took both of Chisholm's hands in hers. I need to tell you something, she said. And I need you to stay with me while I do. Chisholm's eyes moved briefly to Jaemin standing a respectful distance behind Yemi. Then back to her friend. Her grip tightened. Tell me, she said quietly. Outside the ballroom windows, Abuja blazed beneath a full moon. Inside, in the corridor, Damelaire Fashola stood surrounded by 3 men who did not need to touch him to make their point, his phone confiscated, his careful architecture of betrayal fully and finally exposed. And Chairman Oh Tae-sung, who had smiled at Yemi across a ballroom 40 minutes ago with the confidence of a man who believed the board was already set in his favor, was now standing near the exit with 2 of his people, speaking in low urgent tones, recalculating. He had not counted on Jaemin coming himself. He had not counted on the girl being loved by someone who prepared for every possible version of losing her. That was his mistake.
Chisholm did not cry immediately. That was the thing about people who had built everything themselves from nothing, they did not collapse at the first impact of devastating news. They absorbed it. Stood inside it. Turned it over with their hands like something broken they were already trying to figure out how to fix. Yemi had watched her friend do this with failed contracts and family losses and the specific cruelty of an industry that told black women their vision was too much until suddenly it was exactly enough. Chisholm Okafor did not break easily. But her hands, still holding Yemi's, were shaking. For years, she said. Her voice was completely level. Her eyes were not. I gave him 4 years. I know, Yemi said. Every contract. Every negotiation. Every deal I was too exhausted to read the full terms of because I trusted him to, she stopped. Pressed her lips together hard. The international distribution deal. The one I celebrated. The one I called my mother about. We are going to fix it, Yemi said firmly. Jaemin's legal team is all ready. I do not care about fixing it right now. Chisholm's voice cracked on the last word. Just slightly. Just enough to let one true thing through before the composure sealed back over it. I trusted him, Yemi. I trusted him the way I trust you. That kind of trust. She shook her head once, a small tight motion. Who does that? Who looked someone in the face every day for 4 years and... Someone who was afraid, Jaemin said quietly from behind Yemi. Both women looked at him. He had not moved closer, he was still maintaining the careful respectful distance he had held since they began this conversation, because he understood, with the particular intelligence of someone who had spent a lifetime reading rooms, that this moment belonged to them and not to him. Damelaire was being coerced before he was complicit, he continued. Oh Tae-sung identified him 18 months ago. There were debts. Family obligations he could not meet. Oh offered to make them disappear. A pause. That is not an excuse. But it is the truth. He made a choice that harmed people he cared about because he was cornered and afraid and chose wrong. It happens. Chisholm stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Yemi. You left this man. Despite everything, despite the tension and the fear and the devastating tenderness of the past few minutes, Yemi felt something almost like a laugh move through her chest. Chisholm. I am just saying what I see. We are in the middle of a crisis. People reveal themselves in crises. Chisholm squeezed her hands once, hard, then released them. She straightened to her full height, which was considerable, and turned to face the ballroom with the expression of a woman who had just swallowed something bitter and was deciding, consciously and deliberately, not to let it poison her. Where is Damelaire now? Secured, Jaemin said. And Oh Tae-sung? Jaemin's phone vibrated in his jacket. He checked it. Something shifted in his expression, the first genuine crack in his composure all evening, there and gone in under a second, but Yemi caught it. She always caught it. What? She said immediately. He looked up from the phone. Oh is not leaving. You said he would leave. You said without Damelaire he had no direct mechanism. He has made a direct mechanism. His voice was still controlled but underneath it something had tightened to the point of strain. He has called someone. Someone is coming into the building right now. He was already moving, turning toward his team's position, and then he stopped. Because Yemi had stepped in front of him. Who? She asked. Yemi. Who is coming, Jaemin? He looked at her. And in his face she saw the thing he had been protecting her from all evening, not the danger itself, but the specific shape of it. The personal shape. His son, he said. Oh Juno. Who has been, for the past 14 months, a member of the Nigerian Federal Trade Regulatory Commission. The implication assembled itself in the air between them like smoke. Oh Tae-sung had not come to Abuja to collect leverage through Damelaire. Damelaire was simply the opening move. The real move, the one that had been in motion for over a year, was his son embedded in the regulatory body that oversaw companies exactly like Adaeze Textiles. Companies that could be audited, investigated, suspended pending review, destroyed not through acquisition but through the machinery of an institution that was supposed to protect them. He is going to go after my father's company through the Regulatory Commission, Yemi said. Unless we give him a reason not to. What reason? Jaemin was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Me, he said. Oh Tae-sung and I have intersecting interests in 4 port contracts along the West African coast. If I offer to withdraw from 2 of them, concede ground I have spent 3 years acquiring, it costs him more to pursue your father than to walk away. She stared at him. You would give up 3 years of work. Yes. For my father's company. For you, he said simply. No decoration. No careful framing. Just the truth, the way he had been releasing truths all evening in small devastating increments, each one landing quieter and deeper than the last. Everything I would give up for you. That has not changed. 8 months has not changed it. I do not expect that information to change your decisions. I am simply, the ghost of something crossed his face, done pretending it is not true. The ballroom around them continued its elegant, oblivious celebration. The band played something warm and slow. The chandeliers threw gold light across 100 people who had no idea that in the past 2 hours the entire architecture of an evening had been dismantled and rebuilt around 2 people standing 4 feet apart with 8 months of silence and 1 unremoved silver bracelet between them. Yemi looked down at the bracelet on her wrist. The 2 words engraved inside it in Hangul that she had never shown anyone, never translated for anyone, kept entirely to herself like something too important to share. Stay. He had given it to her on the night she told him she was thinking of leaving. Not as a demand. Not as a plea. Simply as a true thing he wanted her to have, whatever she decided. She had left anyway. She had kept it anyway. She looked up at him. At the boy from Busan underneath the empire. At the man who had crossed 1,200 kilometers and built an invisible operation around her safety and given up 3 years of work for her father and still, said I do not expect that information to change your decisions, because even now he was trying to give her the choice freely. Without pressure. Without the manipulation that someone with his power could so easily have deployed. She reached out and took his hand. Not dramatically. Not with the weight of announcement. Simply and quietly, the way you reach for something you have decided to stop pretending you do not need. His fingers closed around hers. She felt him exhale, one slow, controlled breath, and underneath it something that had been held rigid for 8 months and 12 days released. Call O Tae-sung, she said. Make the offer. End this tonight. He raised her hand briefly and pressed his mouth to her knuckles. One moment. Then he was on the phone, composed and precise and utterly himself, dismantling a man's leverage in 3 languages with the patience of someone who had always known that the man who speaks last controls the room. Chisholm appeared at Yemi's shoulder. Slipped an arm through hers. Said nothing. Just stayed, because sometimes staying is the only language that matters. Outside, Abuja blazed beneath its full moon. Inside, the band played on. And in the corridor, O Tae-sung listened to the offer being made, calculated the cost of refusing it, and made the only rational decision left to him. He let go. Some things, even for men like him, were simply not worth the price. And in the center of a gold-lit ballroom, Yemi Adaeze stood with a silver bracelet on her wrist and her hand in the hand of a man who had never once stopped meaning it, and felt, not the dizzy uncertainty of a beginning, but the solid, quiet, unshakable feeling of something returning to its rightful place. Not a fairy tale ending. Something better. A true one. If this story held you from that very first knife in the mahogany table all the way to this moment, you already know what this channel deserves. Hit that like button right now, it takes 1 second and it helps this story reach someone who needs it tonight. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. New stories every week and every single one is built to keep you here until the very last word. And drop a comment right now, did Yemi make the right choice taking his hand? Would you have walked away again? I read every single one. See you in the next story. Do not go far.